All communities on the Outer Banks have recently adopted new FEMA flood insurance rate maps. In Dare County, these maps removed a large number of properties from special flood hazard areas. Figures provided by Dare County show the number of structures located in a V flood zone decreasing by 36% in Duck. The number of structures in an A flood zone decreased by 79%. Local governments in Dare County shared concerns about the potential impact of these new maps. Property owners may view their location in an X flood zone, which has no building elevation requirements, to mean they have a very minimal or no risk of flooding and base decisions on this assumption. This perception of very low or no risk may cause owners to decide to drop flood insurance, and this decision could lead to uninsured damages during flooding events and potentially significant insurance rate increases in the future. The reduction in minimum building elevation and other standards could encourage the construction of significant improvements without flood prevention measures in areas at risk of flooding. Damages to these improvements could cause hardship to property owners and negatively impact the community's flood insurance rating. To address these potential issues, Outer Banks planners worked in partnership with local building inspectors, home builders, engineers, surveyors, realtors, insurers, and financial institutions to implement a two-pronged approach involving first a comprehensive educational campaign about flood hazards and flood insurance, and secondly, adoption of local flood damage prevention ordinances with standards ensuring that future development occurs in a less risky, more sustainable manner.
Coordinated by the Dare County Public Relations Department, the Low Risk is Not No Risk campaign educates property owners, realtors, contractors, and others that there are still potential flooding risks on properties located in X flood zones. The campaign also advises property owners to develop responsibly and consider maintaining flood insurance in these situations.
As part of the two-pronged approach that Joe Hurd mentioned, each town in Dare County, as well as Dare County, adopted a minimum building elevation standard along with other higher floodplain development standards, even in X flood zones, to help prevent flood damage and mitigate the impacts of the significant changes resulting from the adoption of the new flood maps. Changes that were specific to Duck include the establishment of a minimum local elevation standard of 10 feet in X flood zones. The 10-foot standard is consistent with the town's prior A flood zone elevations. During many recent planning efforts, the town of Duck has stressed its desire to be a more resilient community. Setting a higher local elevation standard is consistent with those goals as it addresses sea level rise projections over the next 15 to 35 years. We also included a freeboard requirement ranging from 0 to 3 foot or an elevation of 10 feet, whichever is greater in all A flood zones. A zone elevation should be at least as high as X zone standards, as these areas are typically more prone to flooding, with the base flood elevations for AE zones on the new flood maps ranging from only 4 to 5 feet above mean sea level. Requiring the LES is necessary for these properties. In coastal high hazard areas along the oceanfront, structures must maintain a free and clear standard of 2 feet and a freeboard of 2 feet. Elevating structures on these oceanfront properties decreases the probability of damage from wave action and ocean overwash. Structures located in X zones that are below the 10-foot LES will be required to meet the same standard as those in the A zones. For instance, these structures would need flood-resistant building materials for enclosures below 10 feet. They would also need to install flood vents in walls and elevate their mechanical equipment. These requirements are intended to reduce potential flood damage and improve the safety of structures. Despite these higher floodplain development standards, we still allow remodeling or renovation of existing enclosures below regulatory flood protection elevations, because these improvements do not increase existing nonconformities. Our intent is not to penalize property owners for existing conditions. We do require existing structures proposing substantial repairs or improvements, meaning over 50%, to be brought into compliance with our current standards. Substantial improvements may require elevating non-conforming structures, utilities, and/or other improvements. Again, the intent of these requirements is to decrease damages to the structures. These efforts can also significantly reduce flood insurance rates for the property owner in the future.
Over the past few years, the town of Duck has engaged residents, property owners, business owners, and many other stakeholders in our community in efforts to address issues and opportunities as we plan for the future. Through its Vision 2027, Resiliency Study, Vulnerability Assessment, Hazard Mitigation Plan, and Comprehensive Land Use Plan, the town has consistently identified ways to minimize the impacts of natural hazards and improve our resiliency as a community. Adoption of the standards in the town's new flood damage prevention ordinance help fulfill the town's goals of creating a more sustainable, resilient community in the future.